I'm going to invite the Auto Trader team to the stage, gentlemen, if you will. This is literally the A team, right? Exactly. So a round of applause for these gentlemen as they come. I will, absolutely. I will make note, as we move through the day, there are going to be a few segments where we'll be giving out some awards. So following this, we'll have a short break, and then the IntelliChoice CPO Awards will be announced. We'll have a presentation from U.S. News and World Report on some of their CPO studies and awards there. And later in the day, the Vincentric CPO Awards as well. So that's part of this event as well, so we'll look forward to that. Gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the stage, and we'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. Morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you. That helps. I'm Scott Hernalsteen with Cox Automotive. I lead one of our research and market intelligence groups. I'm really excited to be able to share some information with you guys today. So I am a research guy, which means I like to ask questions a lot, and I like numbers a lot. So you're going to see and hear a lot of that, and I figured I might as well start with you guys. We can consider this Q&A, maybe a little bit of light stretching, but it'll help validate something for me too. So please, just by show of hands, raise your hand if you have ever purchased a vehicle before. Okay, I feel good I'm in the right room so far. Have you ever been involved in selling a certified vehicle or working on a certified program? Still pretty good, okay. Are you a millennial or have you ever met a millennial? Okay, good, I think we're warmed up and I feel good about where we are. So let's move ahead with the presentation. In the spirit of throwing numbers at you, here's the first one, and it's a big one. There are 22,706,937 people shopping for a car right now. And when I show that number and I say that big number, you're thinking probably a few different things. One is, wow, that's a big number. Two is, does it pass a sniff test? Does it relate to sales? How does it correlate? Three is, really right now, some people are sleeping or working. They probably shouldn't be shopping for a car. And the last one is something like, wow, he picked a number that ends in 7. He didn't even bother to round up or round down, so that must be the number. I trust this guy. I hope that's where you all landed, because this number is pivotal for my next couple of slides. So let's stick with that number for now. If you break down that over 22 million people that say they're in market now, you can see what the split looks like. And the rankings look familiar. Used car on top, new car in the middle, CPO on the bottom. But what stands out is the 3 million people that are leaning CPO within that consideration set. It's 13% of the market. That's not what we see in sales, but it tells us the interest level is there. What's interesting here is this is interest level before we've explained anything about CPO to them. So they're primed and ready, at least to hear more. I want to talk about a couple of trends for a minute. We've got a few different things on this slide. The solid green line is what CPO sales have looked like for the last few years. The light green dotted line is if we were to trend that out based on the 21% that Majdi just mentioned, if it was 21% of a franchise dealer's used sales. The darker dotted green line is actually looking at the last 3 years and saying we've had a little bit of an acceleration around CPO. If we take that trend and apply it, that gets us to 3.5 million CPO sales. So we're looking at 2020, 3 million, 3.5 million, but there's another variable that we've heard a little bit about if you were around yesterday or been studying this category, is the off-lease element that's coming at us. We're gonna have 4.6 million vehicles come off lease in the next few years, and that outpaces the number of sales that we've had historically and where we're trending. So I asked myself, is this a problem? Should this be a problem? And I believe the answer is no. I think it's a big opportunity for all of us because the market from the consumer demand side can absolutely be a lot bigger. And here's part of what makes me think that. So this pie looks familiar, but you see the CPO number has gone up from 3 million to 5.2 million. Why? Because we explained CPO to consumers in the survey. We started with your general level of interest without any explanation. Once we gave them a little bit of detail, interest spikes by 71%. There is a massive opportunity, right? So we put a number out there of 5.2 million. That is not the number. It's really to illustrate that it is a sizable audience, there's a massive amount of interest, and there's a way that we can capitalize on it as part of this industry. So I want to talk about 4 cornerstones to how we might do that. How do we maximize this market potential for CPO? The first one is the right inventory. The second one is how we message and how we educate consumers. The third one's around accelerating or enhancing the CPO offer. And the fourth one is around something all the dealers should be doing anyway, thinking about how to deliver a stellar experience for the consumer when they're on their lots. So let's dive in. First one's around the right inventory. The reality is, when you talk about CPO inventory, first it starts with the right make and model. You have to have the right car that people are looking for to then lead into the CPO conversation. That's what you open with, is making sure you're getting the right person in the right car and not in a certified program. And they tell us the most important criteria for purchasing a vehicle: 1, 2, and 3, make, model year, body style, and then they start with the new used CPO conversation, and then the warranty coverage. It may feel like, yeah, I knew that kind of set of data points, but what we did is we actually did some dealer research as well, if I can get that. And they're not really aligned in their perceptions of how consumers think. Dealers actually overestimate the importance of warranty coverage and underestimate the body style, the type of car that people are looking for. So they're a little bit out of alignment, and that can cause a little bit of a disconnect in how you engage in the conversation with the kind of shopper who's open to CPO. Another piece we want to talk about is how quickly you can turn CPO inventory. And I know if you saw Jonathan and Tyson yesterday speak at the end of the day, these numbers are a little bit different. Our numbers are a little bit lower in terms of days to turn, and theirs were actually flipped. They had CPO staying on your lot a little bit longer. A difference might be is the way we ask this question of dealers is, once the vehicle is frontline ready, how long does it typically take to sell these kinds of vehicles? And they tell us that they're turning CPO faster, which is a great lever. The other great lever is, obviously, you can put a premium price on this. We say shoppers value CPO on average $3,000 or more than the same vehicle if it weren't certified. And $3,000 is a big number. It doesn't mean that's exactly what they spend. In fact, dealers here think that consumers value about $1,260 incrementally for a CPO vehicle. But I think this is a great opportunity. I would much rather, if I'm having a price conversation with somebody and I know I'm going to land somewhere around $1,800, knowing that that other person understands that there's about $3,000 of value there is a great way to start, rather than thinking I've got to work them hard to get them up to $1,800. So I think this is good context for us to have in mind. When it comes to messaging and educating consumers, what are they looking for? We call it the essentials. They want to know the vehicle's backed by an OEM and or a dealership. They want to know that it's passed a detailed inspection. They want to know it has an extended warranty, that it has a vehicle history report, and that they're going to get scheduled maintenance from a dealer. What are they really willing to pay for? Great condition and technology. And I love that first one up there, mechanically perfect. That's an interesting phrase. That's a hard thing to deliver on when we're talking about used inventory, but it's part of the promise that consumers care about when it comes to certified, better condition than used. They're looking for peace of mind at the end of the day, right? They've got this value in their mind. This is the benefit of that value and that monetary amount that they're willing to consider here, and they really want to get to peace of mind. Dealers get this. They actually very correctly identify that these are the essentials for CPO shoppers. So when you get to having that conversation, the alignment is very much there. So I asked you earlier about millennials. In all of our research, we're taking a look at millennials as a slice. And this was interesting. Millennials are more often willing to pay more and willing to pay more amount, or at least place a higher value on certification compared to non-millennials. See the number 3,800 there. Now, I will admit to you that that is within the slice of millennials who are 25 to 34 and have a little bit more money to put behind their concept in their heads. The 18 to 23-year-old millennials valued it much lower, but they also have much less income to put behind it. So there was a big difference there. And what are the things that millennials want in a CPO vehicle when they're looking for it? More than non-millennials, they want extended warranty, they want the latest tech features, but they also want mechanically perfect. They also want better condition than used. And as I was thinking through this, I've used 3 words that I think are not terrifying, which is peace of mind. But if you think about the consumer experience, there's a chance that that peace of mind gets eroded when if a consumer comes back 2 months later with some maintenance issue, something they need done with the car, and they hear 3 terrifying words, you may be thinking these already in your head, that's not covered, right? This is when consumers get off of that high and start to say, oh, okay, maybe this isn't quite what I thought it was. So I think we need to keep that in mind when it comes to messaging, because there's absolutely opportunities to avoid that stressful situation with consumers on setting the right expectations around programs, and as we move into accelerating the CPO offer, maybe even adding on to what the standard CPO package includes. So what we did with consumers is we put these 3 packages in front of them. One's a concierge package, free pickup to get your vehicle and bring it in for service, free wash and detail, a loaner vehicle during that time, towing coverage. Next one's a security package, free GPS tracking, vehicle alarm notification, engine fail-safe or lockdown. Third was a maintenance package, free oil changes, 1-year cosmetic damage coverage, coverage at any franchise dealer across the United States. Right, so these were not part of the standard certified program, but what happened is when we put these in front of consumers, if you consider the top is sort of CPO, no additional add-ons or packages, when you add the concierge package on top of it, a 9% lift in interest. Right? It's modest, but it's there. The security package, 17%, but the maintenance package, 44%. And that's the one that had a little more oomph with it in terms of extended coverage, especially around cosmetic issues. Now, if you bundle them all together, 61% lift in interest. Now, that's not a take rate, but it kind of lets you know where the consumer mindset is. They want to keep building this confidence. They want to keep building this peace of mind around the vehicle that they're going to take home, and they're willing to pay for it. Our last category is around delivering on the experience at the dealership. You know, I mentioned we all know that we've got to provide a great experience for consumers, and they tell us the same thing. So their likelihood to purchase certified, we kind of set the standard at from a 3-star dealer. Let's assume you're buying one there. What if we told you could buy the exact same vehicle, the exact same certification at a 4-star dealer? A 22% lift in interest. From a 5-star dealer, 43% lift in interest. They know enough about the shopping process to know that a better one will leave a positive impact on them. And this is true whether they're buying certified or they're buying non-certified. Other elements of the experience that really pay off with consumers. The first one's really about the product. 93% of consumers who purchase certified are satisfied with that vehicle versus 78% who buy used non-certified. It creates loyalty for the brand. 78% for certified versus 54% for non-certified. Certified actually absolutely is a gateway to a relationship with the brand. Take that down to the dealer level. Likelihood to purchase from that same dealership in the future, certified 69%, non-certified 37%. Absolutely is a gateway to a relationship with the dealership. Not only on the sales side, but on the service side as well. Intention to use that service department from the same dealer, 89 or 87% certified versus 59% for non-certified used. CPO is a gateway to these relationships for the brand, for the sales side, for the service side. I don't know how often you guys use the words group hug in your office or in your dealership, but this feels like an amazing group hug right here in terms of the way you can wrap yourself around the consumer, and everybody feels good about it. There's one last piece that I wanted to leave you with around the dealership experience, and this piece of data actually doesn't come from our certified study. This is from a study that we did on the F&I experience within the dealership. And consumers told us when they go through a traditional process, their satisfaction with the experience is 56%. Their likelihood to recommend that dealer is 39%. Now, what do I mean when I say traditional process? I mean consumer and F&I person sitting across a table from each other, papers in front of them, pens in front of them, turning papers around, explaining different things. Everybody's leaning forward. You know what the consumer's been through at that point during the day and how anxious they are to get on to driving the car home, it's a little bit harrowing for a consumer. So the alternative that we put in front of consumers was an electronic experience. And this was an electronic experience within the dealership on an iPad or similar kind of device, where for this F&I study, the consumer was able to take that iPad and lean back and within their own kind of environment be empowered to learn about the F&I products on their own terms. Not from somebody holding a paper upside down, not from leaning forward into this sort of awkward position, but taking their time to process as they needed. Not only did satisfaction and likelihood to recommend go up, likelihood to purchase an F&I product went up 61%. Just because they understood it better. That education opportunity was there, but it felt like they could take control of it. I think there's a fit for how we can do this with the certified messaging as well within a dealership, right? At the right time, give them control, let them learn, expose some of those add-on products that round out this peace of mind for them, and really build some robust messaging for consumers. So, the 4 cornerstones are important. We have to make sure we've got the right makes and models, get the right inventory for consumers. We have to make sure we have the right storyline for them at the right time. We have to think about how we can create more peace of mind with the products that we offer them. And finally, we really have to knock it out of the park on the dealer experience. You will have an extremely satisfied customer who will come back. And with that, I thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay.
Great stuff.
And as I've learned in the last day and a half, many people know who Howard Polera is, but I'll still introduce Howard. Howard has a long history with AutoTrader and Cox Automotive in environments like this, and we're anxious to have him moderate our panel. Thank you,
Great
Howard.
stuff, Scott. Thank you so much. Yeah, we're all friends, and I get my good friend Bill Zadite talking about me being around forever. I don't know how that went over, but thanks, Bill. But we've been here together, so that means it's all good. We want to take the next 20 minutes, 25 minutes or so. What we did at Cox is we looked at this study, and folks on the panel got together, and we said, what kinds of questions would be going through your minds in the audience as you hear some of this research? Because there were some very compelling points that were made here that perhaps we haven't looked at before as it relates to certified pre-owned vehicles. So we came up with a list of questions that we're going to let our panel experts talk about. We'll leave a couple of minutes at the end if we didn't cover any of the questions that you may have in your minds. But this should really get the conversation going and expand a lot on the research and get into a conversation. So Scott, I'd like to start with you. I thought that one of the most interesting aspects of this study was the insights that you provided on millennials. We learned that they place a higher value on CPO, and they're actually willing to pay more. Knowing this, how do we attract millennials to CPO? And more importantly, how do we get them to choose the CPO vehicle at our dealership? And though I'm directing this to Scott, gentlemen, anybody else, let's have a conversation. Go ahead, Scott, thank you.
Okay. Everybody hear me okay on this one still? It kind of dovetails with what I talked about. We know that millennials are connected, that they're using social media, that they care a lot about what other people think. What's interesting is people have asked me a lot of questions about millennials over the last 5 years. And it's just in the last year that I've kind of turned it around, especially when I'm in front of dealers, and said, look, the headlines about millennials are coming. That's already happening. Are millennials in your dealerships? And they said, well, absolutely. And I said, well, tell me what you're seeing when you see millennials at the dealerships. And they said the number one thing that they see is somebody trying to build confidence in a decision. And that's not unique to millennials, but it's intense with millennials. And they're using a lot of different sounding boards to make it happen. They want to make a good decision. They'll pay to make the right decision. They see the value in the right decision. So the sounding board could be that go-to car person in the family. It absolutely is people in their social network, whether the feedback is garnered online in those social atmospheres or just through their connections offline. we're seeing word of mouth grow among millennials as one of the drivers of the vehicle that they bought. So I think there's a big opportunity, kind of dovetailing with what I talked about, to really educate around that peace of mind. You've got to be able to build that confidence and make that shopper, that consumer, feel like they can trust you as a good place to sell them that product. And I think the right messaging will help us a lot there.
It's funny how that word trust comes out. You know, trust builds value. These are things that we've talked about in our industry for a long, long time. I think another thing that you brought out, which is very important, we hear so much about millennials. I hear some of my friends out there, they start calling it the M word. It's almost like it's getting overplayed. And I think what you brought out is, yeah, the millennials take it to a different level, but I don't want us as an industry using the term millennials, think about this one, as a qualifier, because we got a lot of people in this room who aren't millennials who think exactly like millennials. We live with them, we interact with them all the time. So I think it's okay to use the term millennial as an identifier, but let's not start using it as a qualifier, because then we're going to start putting people in categories, and that might change everything else. Anything else on that area, gentlemen?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we know the category.
Let's just bring it up.
It's a large category, and I think planning for millennials definitely needs to be part of the OEM brand planning, because bringing in this large group of new shoppers to the brand can be is good for the long-term success of the OEMs. Now, having said that, it's also important to note that the millennials find CPO category to be connect with the CPO category. There's value. There is it's a good experience for them, and I think OEMs should invest heavily in targeting those segments.
And Howard, just to add one more thing. You said that trust brings value. I'm going to flip that around. It's the value of CPO that helps build trust to your dealerships. Consumers are looking for that trust factor. And if you show them enough value in that vehicle, and you show them what was been done to the vehicle by putting in the various inspections and repairs, and giving them a new like new vehicle, that builds the trust. So the value actually builds the trust.
Great point. Majdi, the study showed that CPO ownership creates brand loyalty for an OEM. What are some ways manufacturers can take this knowledge to capture? Scott talked about the potential for even more growth in that CPO space. What are some ways manufacturers can take this knowledge and capture even more CPO buyers?
Howard, before I get to that question, I think I want to back up a little bit, because I think the CPO within the... Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I think it's important to note that within the OEM world, and this is not everybody, but the majority, a lot of the OEMs still think that CPO competes with new car sales, and that's an issue and a perception that has not been overcome yet. And I think as we evolve the category, we need to continue to evolve the metrics and have a better understanding of how CPO operates within the brand ecosystem, how CPO helps new car sales, how it helps build the brand. And as we evolve these new success metrics, I think the category will continue to grow, and OEM and CPO share of mind within the OEM world will grow.
What metrics specifically do you have in mind in terms of perhaps looking at this? I know we always look at CPO as a percentage of new car sales.
Correct.
Is there a different way we can look at this to give us a better picture?
So this is a personal opinion. Comparing CPO to new car is actually not a good metric. I think these are two different categories, and they cannot be viewed. We cannot look at, we had a good CPO month, but it was a bad new car month. You know, you can't look at them that way. But I think the true metric, I always think of CPO as an upgrade to used. And I think it's important for dealerships to present CPO as an upgrade from a used car. And for OEMs, the benefit there is the fact that they're going to have a loyal shopper, someone that is happy with the brand and the experience, and it will lift the overall brand perception.
So percentage of CPO sales to used cars
So,
versus new
correct.
cars?
Correct.
Interesting.
And you know, the interesting thing, you know, this is not a metric that we used to have a good handle on. But I think as we, like I said earlier, as we're evolving, those metrics are becoming more, you know, they're becoming clear, you know, more clearly defined, and they're more accurate.
Very interesting.
So, and that's where I think the opportunity is selling more CPO as a percent of new.
Rob, we talked a lot in the study, and the research reaffirmed the importance of a good dealership experience. You know, all of us are tuning in on delivering a better experience because today's consumer not only expects it, but demands it and can find the experience that they're looking for. But when it comes to CPO owners, and this is a new way of looking at it that came out of our research, we see that the CPO ownership experience actually increases loyalty to that dealership. So my question for you is, how can a dealer not only just talk about, but also deliver on a positive dealership experience that will bring more repeat customers as it relates to this CPO brand?
Well, first, Howard, let me introduce myself since I'm the mystery guy in the panel. My name's Rob.
Sorry,
That's
Rob.
okay. My name's Rob Christman. I've been with about 14 years with Cox Automotive, been working the last several as director of fixed operation sales, and have focused on the CPO market. I've had the pleasure and blessing of being able to deal and work with dealers in about 45 states around the country, so I get a pretty good feel of what's been going on. One of the things that we found, and one of the things I've found while I've been out there, is that dealers are still treating the experience of CPO the same as they are with used. The most successful dealers are the ones who are fully committing to the CPO process within the dealership. And when I say that, that means when they're doing their online advertising, they're talking about the value. They're talking about what this vehicle has specifically. They're talking about that inspection. They're talking about the repairs that have been done to it. They're talking about the warranty that comes along with it. They're touting that peace of mind. They're really building the trust in the dealership, and they're building the safety of that vehicle. So being able to speak to that vehicle before the consumer even walks into the dealership is one thing. Second thing they're doing is they're actually having a conversation with that consumer when they get to the dealership. They're finding out what their goals are. They're finding out what their expectations. They're finding out what their driving patterns and behaviors are so they can point them to the right vehicle. And they're finding out the reason why that safety or the security is important to that particular consumer, and they're committing to it. They're not going to quickly just jump off of this vehicle because it might be several $1,000s higher than a plain CPO. So they're committed to CPO from start to finish. And what they're finding is, yes, they're going to be putting a few extra dollars into the vehicle up front and the reconditioning piece of it. And yes, they're going to be putting a little bit more money into it for the warranty that's going to come along with that vehicle. What they are getting is they're turning those cars faster. They're turning it at usually a higher gross, and they're also getting an increase in the F&I side of things with an additional vehicle service contracts. So when you commit from the time of sourcing the vehicle to the time of advertising the vehicle, having the sales conversation, and working with your F&I department all together, that's what the most successful dealers are doing in the CPO space.
That's a pretty rosy picture, and Scott, it's supported by the research that you just shared with everybody. All of a sudden, the dealership experience is becoming a meaningful piece of not just overall sales, general sales, but CPO success also. Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
And speaking of that experience, when we use the M word, and you're talking about the millennials, The millennials, the experience is the most important piece of whatever it comes down to. Whether it be your online presence when they're looking for the reviews, whether they're talking about it socially on their Facebook or Twitter or Instagram accounts, it all comes down to that experience. When they have a great experience at your dealership, they're going to tell the world about it. And they want to have that great experience. They want to be able to connect with you at the dealership, and they want to be able to connect with their friends as well.
Great. I got one more final question. I'm going to ask this to all of you. We're going to all of a sudden become what we like to call fearless prognosticators. We're going to try to predict the future, and you know what happens typically when you do that. But we'll take a look at the future, and then we'll have a few minutes to answer any questions that may come from the audience. So just a general question. We'll start on your end, Scott, and here's the question. What is the future of CPO, and how do you see it evolving? And let's think in terms of opportunities when we look at the future, and perhaps some things that we should be looking out for as we move ahead in the future.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick, but a couple things on that. I think going back to the in-store experience, I believe an evolution is coming. Consumers want more of the process to be digital, whether it's online before they hit the store or within the store, regardless if it's CPO or not. But specific to CPO, the how and when we message within store, I think can be a lot more progressive and empowering for the consumer. Another piece of it too, in general, around that experience within the dealership, we see from other studies that on the day of purchase, people are spending north of 3 hours at the dealership. And it's painful, and the parts that they call out as most painful are negotiating and signing paperwork, are the parts they spend the most time on. I think if we can create an environment where we're educating them at the right pace, moving the process along, and with CPO as part of that conversation, even if it takes close to the same amount of time, it will feel better.
Good point.
And finally, we didn't touch on it in the presentation, but I'm very curious about the future of CPO leasing. A handful of brands are in there today. Many others have their own views on it. But I think when we see that big volume of off-lease vehicles come into the market, that may be one of the ways we match demand with supply.
Glad you threw that out there as we're running out of time. That was a very good strategic move. We'll leave that for another conversation this afternoon. Majidi, what's the future look like from your perspective?
I do think the times are changing for CPO. We're entering a new phase with flattening new car sales and rising off-lease vehicles. I think the time to get in the CPO business is now. I think OEMs that figure out how to get in it in a bigger way will weather the next cycle very well, and that will allow them to build the brand and come out, when things turn 4 or 5 years from now or more, it'll allow them to be in a better position to grow down the road. So these are very interesting times, and we have a lot of data now that will allow us to better communicate the value proposition of CPO within the brand ecosystem. How CPO works with new and the experience that CPO delivers to the consumers and the brand. So these are good times, and I think the future is bright for CPO, and I'm excited about it.
Rob, you're kind of boots on the ground, as you said. I mean, you're having conversations with thousands and thousands of dealers. What does the future look like from the dealership perspective, and how do you see this evolving?
Well, first, right now, when you look at it, only about 24% of used vehicle sales are certified. That leaves a lot of opportunity to increase that. So when you look at fully committing at the dealership level to certified, putting that extra few dollars into the vehicle to get even more out of it, 2 things will happen. One, you're going to drive new car sales faster, because one of the things we found is the millennials especially want a new car today. They can't afford it, so they're moving over to certified. If you do data mining within your own system, about 18 to 24 months down the line, we're finding the dealers are able to flip those consumers into new car sales and to keep that loyalty at the dealership and for the brand. The second piece is that there is a giant opportunity for the non-OEM used cars on that dealer's lot to find some way of becoming certified, whether it be the OEM being able to certify the off-brands, sort of like TCOV has been working with, or we find the third-party administrator to find some sort of nationally branded certification for those off-brands. It'll increase the trust, safety, and security across the board. So to me, CPO is, we're not even cutting the tip of the iceberg. It's a very rosy future. It's exciting.
What a great place to talk about a great future for CPO. Thank you, gentlemen. We got a couple of minutes left. What we'd like to do is just turn it over to the audience. I know there's a couple of microphones out there somewhere. So if you have a question, you can direct it at the panel or one specific person on the panel. Just raise your hand and we'll get a microphone over to you. Time for questions. I don't see any hands going up. Well, gentlemen, you know what I always think when you don't get any questions? Job well done. So thanks, Bill. Thanks, everybody at the CPO Forum. We appreciate the time.